Welcome to the Stepfamily Saturday Series with your Stepfamily Guides. We are here to lead you through the everyday challenges of your stepfamily journey. I'm Adrienne, and with me today are fellow Stepfamily Guides, Amelia and Amy. Hi, ladies. How are you?
Good.
Hi there.
Good. Glad to be back for another episode and excited to dive into today's topic, dating someone with kids. I know one of the most frequent questions we get right off of the bat from clients is, when should you meet your partner's kids? What do you guys say to that? What advice do you give?
I think a lot's going to depend on the ages of the children. Again, I think that seems to be a common theme amongst stepfamily challenges. Yeah, I think with littler ones, you know, things can be a little bit easier, but I think as the children are getting a bit older, we have to be a little more strategic in the way that we introduce them. You know, we also need to be careful if we're introducing someone that we're just dating. You know, you don't want people coming in and out of your kids' lives. So that's something to really be aware of, that if this is just someone that you're newly dating, maybe take some time to make sure that that's really it before you bring someone new into your kid's life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think another factor that I consider is, what's the relationship between the parent and the child or children? You know, what does that look like? What is the custody schedule? How often do they have them? How, you know, and what are the dynamics there? Because all of that can play into when is a good time to make that introduction. What do the kids have going on in their lives is another factor to consider. What about you, Amy?
I think the other part of that too is to look at, you know, how long has it been since you and the other birth parent separated, divorced? You know, has there been a span of time where the kids have had some time to do some adjusting and, you know, getting used to that? The other thing too is I always recommend just not rushing it, because you don't know if this relationship, this person's going to be there long term. So I always recommend for my clients, just take your time. You two get to know each other first. Make sure that this is feeling right, feeling healthy and all that before even bringing the kids into it. Because once, you don't want kids to start getting attached to people and then you're like, oh, never mind, he's a jerk, or oh, never mind, she's, you know, she's nuts, kind of thing. So you want to make sure that this is someone you're going to possibly have around for a long time.
Absolutely. You know, dovetailing off of that, I think a follow-up question is always, you know, when we introduce our new partner to children, you know, do you do that as, oh, this is a new friend, or this is a colleague, or are you honest from day one? Do you just tell them, this is somebody that I'm seeing, somebody that I'm dating? How do you guys handle that?
I mean, for me, in my personal relationship, our kids were really, really young. So, you know, we were able to, you know, the very first time our girls met, we just went for a walk and it was, hey, this is my friend and this is my friend's child. And, you know, give some time just to get the kids to get to know each other and get to know that other adult. Yeah, I don't know. Again, it just all depends on the ages.
Yeah, I know there's so many factors that go into what decisions should be made in all of these different scenarios, and each situation is so unique. There's no one size fits all for it.
And I think with teenagers too, they're a little more apt to push back and not be willing to open that door and let someone else in. So if it's just a friend, it's less threatening. You know, oh, this isn't going to be someone that's going to try to replace mom or dad. It's someone mom knows. The other part of that too is, you know, little ones are like, are you going to be my new dad? You know, because it's someone filling in that spot that has been vacated. So that's kind of important to remember too, is that age thing. And our older kids I think they push back a little bit more because they're not necessarily willing to trust another adult to not leave them. So they're like, if I don't let you in, I don't have to worry about my heart getting hurt when you leave. So that could be a part of it too that we need to consider.
Absolutely. And those are all such valid points to consider when you tell the kids, how you tell the kids, what setting, how you broach the topic. I mean, there's so many factors that should be weighed before making that leap. So Let's talk about the realities of dating someone with children from a prior relationship. What does that look like? What are some of the things that, new partners could be faced with?
I think coordinating schedules is probably the number one issue that I've had to work with my clients on, because, kids are coming and going. And if you have kids and he has kids, and, who's got kids when, and trying to figure out all of that can be quite the struggle. And if it's someone that has kids dating someone without kids, that other person may not be used to all of the demands on a birth parent because they haven't done that role yet. So that can be, I've had a couple of couples where we've really had to work on the expectations, because she thought, oh, he's got, all this time, he's going to spend it all with me. And in reality, he had a son that he had to deal with too. So there was almost some push and pull on who's more important to you right now. So those were kind of the issues I see frequently with my clients.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Amelia?
Well, I think when you're newly dating someone with kids, one thing to remember is, that ex-partner, once they are aware, might not be very appreciative of the new relationship. And it can just start making things difficult, right? Where maybe you'd been involved in this relationship and the ex didn't know, and things were kind of running along smoothly and whatnot. And then all of a sudden you start seeing some bumps in the road, which were unexpected because, when things are going smoothly, you don't expect to all of a sudden, be faced with some major challenges, but that seems to be the case for a lot of people. I think so. Just being aware that this could potentially happen is helpful, because then you can kind of safeguard yourself depending on your situation.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say that no matter how perfect the situation might be, there's always going to be awkward and tense moments that come up, and there's multiple people involved that are all going to have their own worries and concerns. And so working through and talking through those things up front is going to be a good idea. And it's going to save hopefully some arguments or fights down the road. So with that, let's talk about some of the top questions that somebody who's considering dating somebody with children from a prior relationship should probably ask up front and be proactive about. What are some of your thoughts on those top questions to consider?
I think one thing to kind of understand, whether you have children or you don't, is, what is that person's parenting style? Because even if you're not a parent, even if you're not bringing kids into this relationship, but you're eventually maybe going to move in together and you're going to be living amongst, this new family of yours, and you start having a child around that, your partner doesn't parent for whatever reason. Maybe they don't parent out of guilt. Maybe they just are a more relaxed person than you, but kind of getting to know what is their style, because believe it or not, that's a huge problem in relationships, is clashing parenting styles. That's nuclear and step families. So I think it might seem like kind of a silly conversation to have up front, but I really think it's an important one.
I don't think there are any silly conversations to have in step family lives. I think that's the reality. I think if it's on your mind, it's a worthwhile conversation to have. And I think that's important for people to feel comfortable and have the courage to raise the conversations that are on their mind.
Yeah, it's different with a step family, right? You're not going into this relationship just the two of you, right? There's these other little people involved. And so it makes it a little bit more complicated. And so you do have to have some of these conversations that you might not necessarily have, if you were just regularly dating someone. And
and I think there's questions you have to ask yourself too. Like, are you willing to put in the time and the effort that it takes to build a relationship with somebody else's children? Are you willing to put in the time and the effort to have conversations with your partner's ex and build a relationship there, or with extended family from the ex's side that might still very much be involved? And I think you have to really look at yourself internally and be willing to be honest with the answers to those questions.
Yeah,
I think another part of that, oh, sorry. I was just, as you were talking about that, it dawned on me, one of the things that, especially for step parents coming in, that whole boundary issue is huge. Like, are you comfortable setting boundaries? Are you comfortable saying, I'll do this, but not that, I'll put up with this much from your ex, but not this much. And, setting those boundaries to keep yourself protected from all of the emotional chaos that can sometimes be in step family life. And the other thing that hit me too was expectations. Like, we need to be really open about our expectations for ourselves, for each other, for the kids, because sometimes we walk into these relationships and we're like, oh, this is all going to be great. And then it hits the wall and you're like, wait a minute, this isn't what I signed up for. I've heard that so many times. This is not what I signed up for. I want out because this is not what I, thought I was getting into. So in being willing to work through the hard stuff and like digging deep to get through that hard stuff. And there's a lot of hard stuff sometimes. So, do you have the wherewithal to really emotionally dive into this?
Yeah, well, and to that point, I know that when I hear that from clients and I ask them, well, what were you expecting? And they really stop and think about it. Most of the time, they don't really know. They just expected maybe what they expected from a nuclear family, or their dream that they dreamed of as a child of, I'm going to grow up and I'm going to marry Prince Charming and I'm going to have children in this beautiful family. And none of that applies to step family life.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not the reality. And if you go into it with those expectations or with no expectations because you didn't ask the questions or have the conversations up front, it just makes it that much more complicated and messy.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yep.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we hope that there have been some enlightening moments with the topics that we've brought up today, the questions that we think that you should ask yourself, your partner, others involved. And we hope that you'll join us for more Stepfamily Saturday conversations every Saturday right here on Instagram or YouTube or on our website, depending on where you're tuning in. If you have questions that you'd like to hear us talk about or have answers to, please feel free to submit those through our website. You'll find a form there. We hope that you have a beautiful day and we look forward to seeing you next Saturday.